If you're considering testosterone replacement therapy or already on it, you might be shocked to learn that most protocols are doing more harm than good. What if I told you that typical TRT treatments and protocols are leaving men worse off than before they started? Well, today we're going to expose that truth with testosterone replacement with Gilbert, the queen of men's health, who's helped thousands of men optimize their hormones the right way. You'll discover why standard protocols often fail, what your doctor isn't telling you about dosing and timing, and how to actually fix your hormones, whether you're on TRT or not. If you want to cut through the BS and finally understand what's going on with your testosterone, you are definitely going to enjoy this one. Welcome to Wits and Weights, the podcast that blends evidence and engineering to help you build smart, efficient systems to achieve your dream physique. I'm your host, Philip Pape, and today we're exposing the truth, but also simplifying TRT and hormone optimization with Gilbert, the queen of men's health. Brings an unfiltered approach to a complex topic that we as men don't always talk about. She's helped thousands of busy professionals fix their hormones, transform their health. And today you're going to learn why most protocols fail, what actually works for optimizing testosterone, and what to do in terms of treatment and lifestyle. Ali's going to show us what a personalized approach looks like and why typical advice, even by well-meaning people, could be holding you back. Ali, thank you so much for coming on and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. This is fun. This is good because I'm fresh off my Silverback Summit men's health event. So everything we talked about is ridiculously fresh.
Ridiculously fresh. Hot pink, extreme Sour Patch Kid, fresh.
Yes. Oh, I don't like sour. I have them down.
You bring those, I bring the Diet Coke, and we'll just alienate a whole bunch of folks that don't get it. I love it.
Oh, then we'll go viral. No worries.
We will. It's funny. Dr. Spencer Nadolsky's coming on soon. Same idea. Like with I think he posted a meme that was Whitney Houston singing Nothing. And it was like, here's what happens if you cut out red dyes for your health. Nothing. You know what I mean? Anyway, yeah, no, I'm sure that was awesome. What I love about your work is you tell it straight, but you also have taken kind of the best of what medical experts and scientists and everything have on men's health in general, and you distill it down. So I think to set the stage, I want to look at what's wrong with what's out there first and kind of what crazy stuff you've seen. And then we can segue that into what actually works, both in terms of treatment and lifestyle, right? Like training and things like that. So what's the craziest, most inappropriate TRT protocol or approach that you've seen?
Ooh, most of them have to do with clinics down here in Florida, because in Florida, it's kind of like the Wild West where anybody can own a clinic. So there's one next to the gas station, there's so many of them. And basically you could walk in and just be like, I'm going to write my name on a piece of paper. And then they'll be like, cool. What do you want? Winstrol, Anavar, Deca. Oh, you want testosterone too? Cool. We'll give it all to you. And then usually my joke is guys are going to be like, where are these clinics? Can I go? So.
Yeah, right. Exactly. They're like, it's where you sign up for being the governor and also get your driver's license and then your TRT.
Yes, exactly. And a big problem with a lot of them is they give out the same protocol for everybody because they're all playing the volume game, kind of like, a commercial gym that has a very low ticket for entry. They just need numbers. So a lot of these clinics price their services very low and then give everyone kind of the same protocol, which is 200 milligrams of testosterone every week with anastrozole, which is an estrogen blocker, and then either HCG or ganadorelin, which they claim helps fertility. HCG does. Ganadorelin does nothing. HCG also, we can get into this later, but that's something that doesn't need to be taken year round. But many clinics will sell guys on that because they sell HCG. And the worst protocols that I've come across, I had a guy who I think he was 53, and he was on enclomiphene and anastrozole, which is probably the worst thing that you can do to anybody, no matter their age. But it was a little ludicrous. He was on that for over a year. And I was like, how do you feel? And he's like shit. So I'm like, that's to be expected. So I usually have to educate them as to why that is not the best approach for them, why they may see their labs looking pretty, but they may not feel so great. and what the next best steps are. Because we work with a telehealth clinic called Merrick Health, and Merrick is very competent and they do a great job. So if someone's not happy with their provider or they're on a protocol that I know is not going to help them or make them feel better, then I will, let them know, hey, you can come with us. All our clients go through this process, and then you'll be with somebody who actually knows what they're doing. So there's a lot of crazy protocols there. Guys just taking stuff that they don't need or that they were sold on that they don't even know what it does. They don't know how to pronounce it. They just take it because a lot of guys don't question this stuff because it is not necessarily the most comfortable conversation, especially if
Right.
you don't know much about it. You're not going to be like, well, I don't need that. When someone who has MD after their name is telling you that you need it. So,
Yeah, who I'm sure is coming across as supremely confident, bordering on arrogant, which is the vibe I get a lot of times from these guys.
yes.
Okay, so you mentioned blood work and you also mentioned how you feel. And it is kind of interesting that someone will go on a protocol for anything. And this applies to men and women. And then it's not actually addressing the whole, you did this in the first place, right? It's not just to get a number on your labs to change, but it must start there along with understanding symptoms. So, like, what is the screening process that a good clinic or provider would start with to actually personalize it?
Blood work obviously is necessary, but instead of just reading the numbers and going off the arbitrary ranges that many labs have come up with, it's about asking about person, like who is the human behind these lab results? What's your lifestyle like? What is your diet like? How are you sleeping? Do you have any family history? How do you feel? What are your goals? How do you train? All of that goes into what your labs are because your labs are just a snapshot in time. So it's not that these don't change ever. It's literally what is reflective of what you're doing now. So if you are dehydrated, you may see certain things elevated. If you're eating high fat for, a night or a few weeks or whatever, that will be reflected in the lab. So it's important to know that if someone trained the day before or if they're extremely dehydrated, why some markers might reflect that and not to lose their mind and say, oh, you need to go do XYZ or you have this because this is high. It's not necessarily how that works because a lot of it can be attached to things the person did the night before, a few weeks before, a few months before. So it's important to understand everything about them so you can have like the full assessment of, okay, this is not someone who sits on the couch all day drinking beer. This is an active individual who eats very well, does not drink alcohol, has other stuff going on in life. Maybe they're stressed, all that stuff. You can't just read the labs and be like, okay, this is all red. So we have to fix this with this pharmaceutical. Have a nice day.
The doctor approach. So then you mentioned the person sitting on the couch drinking beer versus the active person. Who do you tend to deal with most? And also, would you say, hey, it's not TRT you need? Like, let's work on the lifestyle, period. Like, I can tell that's the issue before we even go there.
We tend to work with guys who are active, who are, business owners, high performers, and usually they stress and undereat themselves into poor health. So that's kind of our demographic. But we have worked with guys who have body fat to lose because, as you know, many men will say, I'm 15% body fat, and they're really like 20 or 25. So that's where photos come in very useful as well. So we tend to deal with guys who are like, I tried everything to get leaner. I tried everything to grow muscle and nothing works for me. And I'm a special snowflake or I don't know what to do. And I'm also very grateful that they realize this because a lot of people are very prideful in knowing what to do in the gym. Maybe they've been lifting for years. Maybe they've been active for years, but there does come a point where if you're after a certain goal, hiring someone that knows how to get you there, not only quicker, but more like efficient so that you don't have to think of stuff and that you don't pivot and try to negotiate with yourself every time you don't feel good or the scale doesn't say what you want or whatever. You have that objective view. And so I always tell clients, I'm like, I've been coaching for about 24 years. I've had a coach for 7.5 years. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because I don't want to deal with myself. Like, I love going into the gym knowing this is my program. And then, whatever I'm eating or if I have a photo shoot or something I want to get ready for, I don't have to worry about the timeline on that. whether I'm doing the right things with progress or whatever. He worries about all that. So those are the guys that we tend to deal with. And a lot of them maybe are not sure if they have low testosterone or don't think they do because their only symptoms are non-sexual symptoms. Because many guys think, well, if my dick still works, that means I have high T. Not always the case. They forget about the brain fog and the lack of energy and maybe inability to sleep and kind of fat storage patterns that they never noticed before. So if someone's like a hot mess on labs and their testosterone is low, then we may say, we have to rectify all this before we look at testosterone. But quite often it's like a chicken or the egg scenario where they really need it. And if they're under coaching with us, we know we're going to handle all the lifestyle stuff because that's something they're going to have to address anyway, whether they go on testosterone or not. So I'm very pro testosterone because I could read labs and know exactly how things will be able to improve with testosterone, but it's not something guys are obligated to do. And I just educate them because a lot of them have questions or concerns or they've heard any of the stigmas associated with it. And it's really just a very open conversation. And we have a lot of guys that are like, you know what, I'm not ready. Let me do everything I can to get healthy first, which I think is awesome. Then we can revisit it. And so when they do that and then they get healthy, they feel good. And maybe then we bring in testosterone, it can be game changing for them because then everything becomes amplified because they're already healthy. If someone's not healthy, it's still going to take a lot of work to get them healthy, but they may not have the best experience on testosterone because their expectations are a little bit different than what they thought it would be going on.
Okay. So what if someone is, because I hear this a lot, like they're doing all the things, they're training, eating well, maybe they are getting sleep, maybe they are managing stress, and they don't have any quote unquote symptoms, at least what they think are the symptoms. And then their lab work is kind of average, let's say, like total testosterone might be in the 500s or something, and they're in their 40s. Is there a situation where you could tell just from labs, despite everything else, that still there might be a potential for improving it from that point?
Yes. And that will depend on their luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone numbers. So LH and FSH. Those are what kind of signal the testicles to produce testosterone. So if those are high, then typically the balls are done. Like something's got to, be looked at here. And it means that they're screaming for the body to produce it, but the body's not producing it. And we'll see that in guys, I used to say older, but we'll see that in older guys, 40 plus. It used to be like 50 or 60 plus. But if somebody's like super stressed and this is a stressed based low testosterone, those numbers will be quite low. And so then it's taking inventory of all the stressors in their life and then seeing, all right, what is the best approach for this person? Does it make sense to bring testosterone in right now? Because it can help combat a lot of the stressors. What are their future goals in life? A lot of guys are like, I don't want to be on it the rest of my life. And they want to hold off as long as possible, which they absolutely should do. It is a lifelong commitment. A lot of men struggle with that. So it's really understanding what their ultimate goal is and does this make sense now? Because it will make sense at some point. It's just when.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand. You did allude to the fact that some of this is happening at younger ages. And I've heard you talk about even from the time we're born, how men are more, I don't know, not the word infantilized, but more feminized and shorter, like taint distance and stuff like that. You've talked about, it's just fascinating. But one thing I want to pull on one thread is you talked about stress and under eating. And you know how the marketing is in the fitness industry. There's so much marketed at women and like perimenopausal women and under eating for women. And you don't hear this talked about as much for men. Just like you with personal clients, it's like, oh, wow, you see how much is going on in men's life that is just the same. I mean, we're all human beings dealing with these things. Like, what are the biggest challenges you see when it comes to stress and under eating that the guys listening can be like, oh, yeah, I identify with that. And now I can kind of grasp it and do something about it.
Well, the first thing is, okay, so you're not eating enough, and obviously they're terrified to eat more. Is what you're doing now working? So we have no choice. Now, we can get you lean, but if you're eating 1,700 calories, how low are you willing to go? It's going to suck, I diet on like 1,500 and we have guys who eat 1,500 and I'm 5'3", 120 pounds. So most men are not my height or stature. Like, so it's getting them to realize that eating more is going to help them. They may not gain a pound. I mean, we had a guy who was eating on his off days, he was at 1,400. On his training days, he was at like 16 or 1,700. And it took until over 3,000 before he actually put on weight. So that goes to show you there's a lot in the tank that was not being used, and he likely was breaking down muscle. So they don't realize that, yes, it worked originally to get you lean, but now we're like so low and you feel like shit. You can't train hard. You're getting injured. A lot of things are screaming at you saying, yo, give me calories. So adding food can help the workouts, can help them train harder because people think the only way to create a calorie deficit is by lowering calories and then they increase activity. But you can also keep activity high and bring calories up and still maintain a deficit. They just don't think of that part. So if you increase your activity, you got to bring calories with you. And no one does that because they think, oh, well, eat less, train more, that's going to work. And so therefore I'll look the way you want. Not necessarily. And they'll stay at low calories amount way too long. Like I always use Chris Bumstead as an example for many reasons. He went to 1,500 calories when he was dieting for the Olympia. That's the Olympia. Hard dieting, someone of his height and weight, really low calories. So that I use that as an example when guys complain that dieting is hard and they're hungry and blah, blah, blah. But on the other side, he only stayed there for a short time. He didn't stay there for 7 months. So that doesn't mean it's going to work better the longer that you do it, because the longer you do it, the more symptoms you're going to experience. So you have to get someone metabolically healthy. And the only way to raise metabolism is not through some herbal supplement or whatever. It's to actually add food. It's talking them off the ledge on how eating more is okay. If the scale does go up, it's not body fat because you're not going to increase body fat within a couple days. Like you have glycogen, you've got water weight, you've got actual food, like, so it's a lot.
I've seen this too. I totally get it because the fear of gaining weight, and you're right. It didn't take you 3 months to put on the extra weight that you're worried about, right? It took like many years. So it's not going to, when you gain intentionally and are training to build muscle and fuel your body, you're not just going to, blow up. And as far as the calories go, like I hear you, I diet on around 2,000 calories. I get to eat over 3 when I'm gaining, right? If I had to eat 1,600 ever, I would just like want to shoot myself. That's crazy. But everybody's different and there's different body sizes too. I do know someone who had bariatric surgery and like he's kind of stuck in that 1,600 range and he's short too. So, people are different. So conversations, I know this is your bag, is like normalizing the conversations around all of this stuff and being vulnerable and with men and all that. Where do we even crack into that? I guess what's the biggest fear, the thing that men don't talk about that they can be encouraged to just right here, right now, as they're listening, like start talking about it more. And that way you can get the support you need on that thing that could be holding you back.
I would say their relationship with their spouse, their family, and their friends, because, especially if it's a guy who's used to hanging out with people that like to drink or party, or maybe they're married to somebody who has like zero interest in fitness, they're not going to understand why this person wants to change. So everyone sees, like, if someone drinks and all of a sudden they're not drinking, they lose their mind. But like if this person showed up to the bar face planting like Buffalo Wild Wings, I don't think anyone would bat an eye. Like it's the most bizarre thing. So I always ask about those relationships because not only will men use, I have to talk to my wife as a smoke screen, they're also like afraid that the wife may not understand, why are you investing in a program? Because maybe they failed many times before trying certain things and now they're going to spend money doing another thing.
Here's another one. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Or that they're going to have to make changes or even go on testosterone, which maybe, their spouse doesn't understand or thinks it's steroids or whatever. So there's a lot that goes into these decisions. So you have to understand where this person's coming from. Because if they're surrounded by people who are just toxic to what their goals are, they have to have some hard conversations and they're not going to like that. But it's the truth. Like, we have ways that we can help navigate that. Like, this is what you say to this person. Like, you can tell people who don't know anything about blood work, you can't drink because your liver enzymes are high, which it can make your liver enzymes high. But people don't know if that's like really bad or, that goes away if you stop drinking, stuff like that. And then explaining to those close to them why these changes are important for their health, for them to show up as the proper husband, father, employee, business owner, whoever it is that they know they can be and that they want to be because maybe they've lost themselves in work or a marriage or something. And those are things that people just don't usually bring up.
Yeah. I mean, from firsthand experience for years, I know I wouldn't ever share anything like that with even my own spouse and even friends. And for me, interestingly, Ali, it was a close friend who had dealt with anxiety and depression and things that I couldn't relate to, all of a sudden started opening up to me as another guy and kind of encouraged me to do the same. And I realized how valuable that was. And there are so many men that just from a very young age, the way they're raised and even seeing their fathers as examples. And my father was very, very quiet, right? So I didn't even know to express love until like I got into relationships in my 20s. So I think that's really important and it's tough to talk about. It even makes me slightly uncomfortable now, right? Talking about it's just a thing. It's like an inherent thing. So when it comes to a spouse, for example, because a lot of our listeners are probably in their 40s, 50s. And so like, just very simply, what is one thing someone can do if today, after listening to this, they want to go open up to their spouse? Like, how can they start that?
Like any difficult, fun conversation. Yeah. You don't do it when someone like first gets home from work or they're stressed or if kids are running around, set time aside and just be like, I have something that I think is very important for us as a family that I would love to talk to you about. When can we do that? And then, if it's entering a coaching program or going on TRT, you have to like explain the benefits of that because it won't be news to anybody that the person's been feeling this way. Maybe their mood has sucked, libido's down, productivity, like showing up as a father, all that stuff. So it's going to be like the elephant in the room, but harnessing that and then addressing it and acknowledging it kind of helps that conversation flow and say, like, this is something I truly help or I truly think that can help me. This is going to allow me to kind of push off any scary things like diseases, stuff like that. This is why it's important for my health and kind of take the conversation from there. Because finances aside, like it's either paying for it now or paying for medical bills and other stuff that can come with ignoring your health, which a lot of guys will. They don't want to confront lab work. They don't want to know. They don't want to address it. They just internalize it. So once they see on paper, like this needs to change, then that brings a whole other conversation with it that we can't ignore this. This is something that we have to address together. And I'm not asking your permission for this. I'm asking for your support in doing this.
Yeah. I imagine that could be a huge relief for some people to just get it off your chest. Whatever happens, it's wonderful to be able to say that. Okay. So let's go back into some nuts and bolts, Ali, and talk about the TRT stuff again a little bit. And you mentioned estrogen management, estrogen blockers, things like that. What about that should guys be aware of that I guess a lot of these providers maybe get wrong and you have to be aware of red flags, things like that, as you're building this protocol?
Blocking estrogen became a thing from the bodybuilding world. And we did, like, I always bring this up on our TRT panel at Silverback because it's such a hot topic. So men need estrogen just like women need testosterone. And one of the biggest benefits of testosterone replacement in men is the conversion of testosterone to estrogen. Because estrogen is cardioprotective, it is neuroprotective, it helps your libido, it helps your insulin sensitivity. A lot of good things come from that. When you block or suppress it to satisfy a lab marker, you're doing a huge detriment to a man's health. And I always use the analogy of women in menopause. they go through menopause and they lose estrogen. What happens? Belly fat, osteoporosis, insulin resistance, cardiovascular issues. So it's the same as when guys block and suppress it. And a lot of clinics don't understand this and they think, well, estrogen's bad. It's going to cause gyno. It's going to cause water retention, strokes, all this shit. It's not true. And the doctors that I associate with have done tons of work researching this and the real science of how estrogen acts in men. And when you see estrogen high on a lab panel in a man who's on TRT, that's a good thing. So it also depends when he did his injection. Like if he did his injection Monday and then gets labs drawn on Tuesday, everything's going to be high. And then it slowly tapers until his next shot. Or if men are on once a week, yeah, you're going to see it really high at first, and then it's going to slowly drop off. So there's a lot that goes into reading those labs, but the lab marker of estrogen is not actually reflective of how much estrogen a man has because it does not work as an endocrine hormone. It works as a paracrine hormone. So it's really just kind of like a fraction of what is in a man's body or in the tissue and all of that. So it's something that a lot of our providers just ignore. None of our clients are on estrogen blockers and they feel amazing. It's when guys are on estrogen blockers and they're like, my joints hurt, my libido's not where I thought it should be. And so then these clinics are like, oh, maybe you need more testosterone. And then with more testosterone comes more conversion. So then, oh, we need more anastrozole. I'm like, oh my God, not how it works. So that's a huge hot topic in the TRT space because people think like, oh, I feel my nipples are sensitive. I need an anastrozole. And it's like, no, that's a normal fluctuation of hormones you're experiencing. That goes away.
And then just to be clear, this is measured through estradiol on the labs. Yeah, just so folks know, because I definitely have heard that story. Now, sometimes it's because their T goes like over 1,000 and maybe they're on too high of a dose or something. But like you said, it's not the downstream effect is not what we're worried about. It's the baseline protocol we're worried about, not trying to block the estrogen. What about aromatase inhibitors, AIs, right? Like, where does that come into this discussion?
It's the same thing. So anastrozole, letrozole, aromasin, yeah, those are all
got it.
The estrogen blockers because they all get prescribed. And even like what you mentioned with T going over 1,000, like there are some physicians that are like, oh, we can't let it go that high. And I'm like, why is it bad? Because anything over 1,000 is bad. I'm like, why? Then they have nothing to back it up. Some guys feel amazing in the 2000s. Some guys feel awesome when they're like 1,400. Like,
yeah,
it's okay. You know, they freak out.
So what does a good protocol look like for most guys? I mean, kind of the steps that you take them through.
They're on injections. It's 2 to 3 days a week. Every other day pretty much is, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That's going to be a great protocol to start with and start there and do nothing else.
Okay. That's a good. We like simple. Because I know you have your testosterone school, right? You still have that, taking people through all of this and trying to simplify it. What from all of that, I mean, you've already addressed a lot of the, I guess, myths, we'll call them. But is there something else that people don't understand that you'd like them to understand that we don't talk about enough?
Oh, gosh. Where do I start?
Open-ended question.
I'll go off what the comments that I got on Instagram because I get trolled incessantly.
That's great. That's great.
By people who don't understand it. So there's many reels where I'm talking about this stuff or I'm saying like, you can inject all the steroids and testosterone you want and sit on the couch and you're not going to turn into like, a model or bodybuilder or whatever. And of course, people come at me with this one study that took 600 milligrams injected, which is not TRT dose, of testosterone and people showed to grow muscle without doing anything. Well, people don't know how to read studies. They don't know how studies work. So just because someone grows muscle, that does not mean they look like they've grown muscle. That does not cut body fat down and instantaneous. Oh my gosh. It's like, it gets me so heated because it's so stupid. So then people are like, well, I have friends that are on everything and they look amazing and they don't really train. I'm sure they don't look amazing and I'm sure you're lying.
I've never met a person like that in my life. Yeah.
Oh my God. The guys that are like, yeah, TRT is going to make me jacked. It's not. Like the purpose of TRT is to bring you to where you biologically should be. That is it. So when men think, oh, I'm going to look, like whoever they want to look like and get a 6-pack, I'm like, you do realize that even bodybuilders who are on grams of testosterone, they still go to the gym. Like they still got to work and they still got to diet and they still got to, do all the other stuff. It doesn't just mean you put a needle in your butt and then you look amazing. So that is one thing that I'm not sure the internet will ever understand, because I did a reel on Jeff Bezos where I was like talking about how like the new CEO flex is having a six pack and taking care of yourself and having your health and all of that. And I showed his before and after from when he was like a dweeb at Amazon to what he looks like now. And immediately a lot of these comments are like, he's on TRT, he's on tren, he's on steroids, he's on growth hormone, he has time and money. And I'm like, these are all excuses from weak-minded individuals.
Insecure people. Yeah.
Yeah. Like of all business owners, entrepreneurs, I know myself included, I'm not like, oh, I've got like 9 hours, nothing to do. I think I'll just work out all day. Like it doesn't work like that. And if you're, again, on TRT or even growth hormone or whatever, does not mean you're going to look a certain way. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions. The other one that I wish people understand is that it can be very health promoting for men. Like it can improve quality of life, improve their ability to resist cancers or other diseases and cardiovascular issues. Like now we've seen studies that show low testosterone puts somebody at an increased risk of heart attack, stroke, and all-cause mortality, increased risk of prostate cancer, increased risk of basically all types of things that people don't want to confront in their life. And a lot of people don't understand that because they've heard bad things. So then they just regurgitate whatever they've heard on the internet, and that's not true. So,
no, that's good. Like the fact that you take tea to get biologically normal where you need to be, which makes sense. And given that humans live far longer than we did, long ago, we're getting to the point, men and women, where hormones drop and you're going to need that eventually, like you said. And the health promoting part, I want to ask about that. Is there, and this is very difficult with studies, is there a causal link or is it correlational because those who have higher testosterone have maybe better health promoting lifestyles? What's your thought on that?
It's causational. Like, so the doctors that I associate with, and I always say that because I'm not a medical professional. So this is not me like, my opinion. Hey, these guys have done the research and they know how to differentiate, because a lot of the prostate cancer studies are correlation, not causation. So it's filtering out the ones that make no sense with the ones that actually do. And there's a lot of evolved literature showing this, but a lot of physicians don't read it because either hormones are not their specialty, they don't have time, whatever the case. But there is a lot of new literature out there showing the benefit of having optimal testosterone levels as a man.
And what is optimal generally? I know it depends, but
when someone hits symptom resolution, but I would say if they're 600 plus, and that range has been lowered twice in the last few decades on men because they show up with lower and lower T. So most guys are told if they're 300 or 400, oh, you're fine. You're good. You're normal.
Right. Then the average used to be, I don't know, 800 or 900, and then it's come down to like 400 or something. I don't know.
It used to start at 350 and go to 1100. And now it starts at like the lowest I've seen is like 186 or 189, which is like abysmal. Like you don't want people walking around with test levels that low, and being told that they're okay. But this is mostly when they go to either a primary GP or somebody who just does not understand hormones and is tied to what insurance companies' regulations have to be.
Yep. I totally get it. All right. So you mentioned training, and this is probably a myth that we're going to bust. You hear people say, okay, now I'm on TRT. What do I do differently with my training? Right. My answer would be nothing. Like train optimally for yourself no matter what. I'm sure that's what you're going to say, right? But like people want to know, no matter who you are, you need to train, guys.
Yeah. It happens like all the time, like in Facebook groups and, on my Q&A on Instagram, it's like, best diet for TRT, best training for TRT. I'm like, there is none. And you guys make me think like I should make one up because that would sell really well.
It would sell.
But unfortunately, I have integrity and I refuse to do that.
Oh my God. Or you can just be silly about it. When they open the document, it said, just like any other training program or something.
Right. They'll be like, fuck, I paid $5 for this.
Yeah, I knew a coach that had something like that. It was like the best foods for this, that. And then you open the document and it said like, whatever works for you. It had like it was just funny. Okay, so how often should people be checking their blood work? At what age? Like, should they set a baseline as young as they can in their 20s and then go from there? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think everyone should get it done, starting in their 20s. And most of our clients get blood work twice a year, maybe more often. If they do go on testosterone, the provider will usually ask for labs at 3 months, but everyone's different. But honestly, twice a year is a good cadence in which to get labs done. That's what I do personally.
Hi, my name is Alan, and I just want to give a shout out to Philip Pape of Wits and Weights for being a huge part of the foundation for my continued health and well-being. Philip exemplifies a nutrition coach who demonstrates how much he cares. Philip works tirelessly and with dedication to provide coaching support and major content for us to use. He creates a practical approach from research, and Philip empowers all of us to use food as quality for our health. He is skilled in how to assess and direct nutrition. Philip creates a community full of wisdom, support, and camaraderie. In summary, Philip Pape is the real deal. He knows how to assess and direct nutrition, and he continues to steer me in the right direction. Thank you, Philip.
Just like training, nutrition, everything else, lifestyle related, guys need to be aware of that changes. Not that you have to do differently, but like it opens up avenues you had maybe closed off because of your symptoms. And now, you know what I'm saying? Like it kind of opens up new doors in your life when you're on TRT.
Yeah, a lot of guys, they start to notice their confidence increases and they're quicker to make decisions, whereas before they might have been more passive or slower in executing stuff. So a lot of them are like, oh my gosh, I was able to say yes or no or, decide something quite quickly. And it becomes this the aura changes on Zoom too. Like they look more confident, they act like it, they can sleep better. And when you sleep better, it solves a lot of problems where you can train harder, you can eat more, you can do a lot of things that maybe you couldn't do before. So it kind of just gives them their life back in a sense where now they're actually able to be a man. And that can be associated with negative things. And I don't think it is at all, because somebody who had trouble making decisions or standing up for themselves or taking the lead, who can now do that, is a really good thing, especially if they own a business or they're in a high stress job. The last thing you want to do when you're in a high pressure, high stress environment is to waver on decisions that need to be made quickly. So those are things that guys will comment on.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And I agree. There's no, if you were going to use the word toxic, which I can't stand anymore when it comes to this stuff. I used to be a super shy introvert and I didn't go on T to get past it myself. I went to, public speaking courses and now I do a podcast and stuff like that. But it helps you help more people. It helps you speak up. Like you said, it helps you make an impact. The fact that you can be more confident. And as a man, I think that is something a lot of men are missing. And when you hear surveys of how the world has been changing, and we're not going to get into politics or anything, but a lot of men feel like they don't have that sense of being a man and being a provider and being a protector. And you could do it in a way that's still completely in line with the other values that we value in society. Anyway, that's just my little side thing, because I totally agree that men need that. Can you tell talking to somebody that they need help? Just do you have that voodoo empathy?
Oh yeah. It's easy.
It's easy. Okay. Tell me more about that. Just tell me more.
There's a lot of men that they're just very unsure of a lot of things. And this is different than being skeptical of the need for TRT, because absolutely somebody should question something that's a lifelong commitment, but it's more of they can't just go. They have to they hold themselves back. They go back and forth. They're very passive, where it's there's people I can bulldoze and go at them because they don't have the confidence to be able to stand up. It's hard to articulate. And I don't do that purposely because, oh, this guy's weak-minded, I'm going to fucking lay the hammer. That's now how I am. It's more, you have to approach some guys more of a softer coddling approach, where some guys you can be harder and more direct, because a lot of men who have low testosterone have high anxiety. And sometimes that high anxiety stays when they go on testosterone goes away, or it can be amplified. So just because someone has anxiety doesn't mean they have low T. But quite often there are guys who have very low T, high anxiety, and they question everything. So instead of questioning everything, which a lot of women do, like a lot of women are like, but what if this happens? And if this, and then that, and then that, and I'm like, stop. Like guys will do the same thing. So I have to spend a little extra time helping them understand their decisions, talking them through the best pathway for them, stuff like that. And then physically, like you can see certain character traits that they have like more of a feminine look and I don't know, like soft skin, like because like when a guy does go on testosterone, like his jawline changes, his whole like demeanor, even over Zoom, like it's like, damn, you got confidence now. All right, and just their ability to communicate becomes a lot better. It's hard to say, but like I can usually just
I think that's cool. I mean, it came to mind because, I mean, you're kind of unique in the space, right, Ali? Like, this. You're unique being a woman doing this and the way you speak about it. I mean, I'm not sure if there's got to be a few others out there, but this is more of your story. And I'm sure you get this question all the time, but like, what drew you to helping men specifically?
I always joke it's because I have daddy issues and really want to save the men, but people don't get it. So then I'm like, that doesn't make sense. But I did have a compromised relationship with my father growing up, which does contribute to needing some sort of like a validating in with men. Like, how can I help them? And it really turned into I want them to end up not like him. I want them to live their best life. But the real story was basically when I graduated with the exercise science degree, I was like, I want to train athletes like we all do. And then you realize they're all broke and that's not going to really do well. And, I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, where it's not the cheapest place to live. So I worked at a commercial gym and I was training people. I got a lot of guys who played golf. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about golf. I played soccer in college. Golf is a sport. And these guys are actually willing to work hard, focus, type A, and they could afford to train. So I was like, I'm going to go all in on golf fitness, which I did. And I was the golf fitness person for years, like the go-to golf fitness person, Golf Digest, top 50, like all that stuff. But it brought me all men as a clientele. And a lot of the conversations would go into nutrition and energy and hormones and all that. And I was like, no one's talking about this with these guys. So I kind of just ran with it because I enjoyed working with the guys better simply because I related easier because I was an athlete and, very much like very chill. Like I don't fit in my hometown. I was not about like designer clothing and all that stuff. I just was like, get to work, let's do it. So that's kind of how I landed in men's health and then just went to medical conferences, built relationships with doctors, shadowed them, learned everything I could. And then I ended up speaking at medical conferences and then kept working on those relationships to get blood work for clients because I knew that that was kind of the missing piece of what I could do legally. And now here we are where I realized there's no events that cover this stuff. So I created my own event and I have my own network of physicians and working with Merrick has been a game changer for a value add in our business. And so now everyone's on the same page because there's always this huge divide between medical and fitness. And it would create conflict because a lot of men would piecemeal their health together. Like they would get nutrition info from here. They would do this training program and then talk to this doctor. But this doctor is completely the opposite of what they read or what they talk to their coach about. So on paper, I'm like just some fitness professional who's going to listen to me. If you go back to tell your doctor, like, my trainer says that, aromatase inhibitors are bad and I should be on more than one injection a week. He's going to be like, who's this chick? So now it's a lot different where the doctors call me and they seek me out because they see the ability to collaborate makes everybody better and everyone wins because it's not a competition. It's more like, hey, this is your lane. I can't legally prescribe medications. I can handle all the lifestyle stuff that many doctors will try to give advice on, but it either falls on deaf ears or it's not customized enough to where somebody can follow it. Let's come together so that we can produce the best experience for somebody so that they get what they need. But then everyone talks. So I'll sit in on sessions with our clients with their provider so that, hey, we got this under control and he's eating this way. So that might reflect in the labs, but it's not going to be for a while. But, I know that he's dealing with some blood sugar issues. We've got him doing this, like all of that, so that, cool, their job's easier, our job's easier, and everyone wins.
That's a great way to do it, because a lot of people, they have to be the center of all of that, right? The client or the patient has to kind of pull and go and push. And like you mentioned multiple times, GPs tend to be a little bit clueless on this. Most of them are, not all. I've met a few good ones who actually want to listen, and they also maybe lift weights, right? Like, which is rare, but sometimes you see that. And the other thing I notice is just even talking to you here, and this is why I wanted you on, is there is something about a man talking to another professional. And this is my opinion. It's just there's certain walls that are there. And I feel like maybe when they talk to you, they're like, all right, this is a totally different experience. You're a woman. I could just open up for whatever reason. It feels like you're more protected. I don't know if you get that.
Yeah, I get that a lot, because I used to get like, do guys even open up to you as a woman? Like, isn't that embarrassing? And then I think because I normalize this, I talk about it so much, something about me makes people just like tell me their whole life story. So I don't know.
Too much, right? Too much of their life story. No.
Like, if maybe that's astrological, or, I'm a good listener. I don't know. But at least I'm able to disarm that wall and then really get the truth. Because there is, like, sometimes guys will tell me something but not tell one of my coaches something. And then I'm like, okay, this is not like HIPAA, but I have to go back to the client and be like, hey,
is it okay if I share this with them?
So it does allow them to open up. Plus, I think it's a little bit of a pride thing. Like, if a guy is sitting in front of another jacked dude, he's not going to be like, I can't get it up. And,
Yeah, good point. It's competitive. It's like in our nature to be competitive, and like, you're like the primates, fighting on the savannah kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. It's interesting. Yeah, because they're like, I'm obviously a man, and I have most of my clients are actually like women, 2/3 of them. And I remember early on in my coaching days being kind of insecure, not confident necessarily we even want to open up, but I find it can work both ways, and it can work men to men, women to women. Like, it just depends on the individual, right? It's not that one is better than the other, but I think you do a great job in your space with this. So having said all that, I know there's so much about testosterone we could have gotten into. Folks should check out all of your content. Is there something you wish I would have asked, given where this conversation went? And what would be your answer?
I mean, I don't know. I'm a very twisted individual, so the direction of conversations can go multiple ways. So I don't know. That's a very odd question for me to answer, because like, I think we did cover a lot. So yeah, I can't answer that. I'm sorry. I wish I had a more entertaining response, but I don't.
No, that's a tough one. It holds people up. And I know if I get asked that, I probably am like deer in headlights myself. It's all good. It's all good. All right, cool. So where do you want people to find you? Because this has been a great conversation. I want people to reach out.
Everything I do is on Instagram. So on Instagram at the Ali Gilbert ALI, slide in the DMs, and just my entire page is all videos on coaching, TRT, all that stuff. So
for sure, check out at the Ali Gilbert. Super responsive. She was responsive and coming onto this show, and I hope everybody learned a lot from this conversation. It was awesome chatting with you today, Ali.
Thank you for having me.